was coming down in torrents, a relentless deluge that turned the streets into rivers. I was alone in my house, the rhythmic patter of rain usually a comfort, but that night it felt oppressive, almost malevolent. I was in the kitchen, making myself a cup of tea, when I noticed something strange through the window. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw them, 3 shadowy figures standing just beyond the edge of my yard, barely visible through the sheets of rain. They didn't move, didn't seem to be affected by the weather at all. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a couple of people seeking shelter, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I decided to call the police, but when I picked up my phone, I saw that I had no signal. The storm must have knocked out the cell towers. As I debated what to do, a loud knock echoed through the house. I jumped, spilling my tea. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the front door. Looking through the peephole, I saw nothing but darkness. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. The knock came again, more insistent this time. I backed away, my mind racing. The figures were still outside, and now someone was at my door. I decided to head to the basement, where I could lock myself in and wait out the storm. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down the stairs. The basement was cold and damp, but it felt safer than upstairs. I locked the door behind me and sat down, trying to calm my nerves. Suddenly, I heard footsteps above me, slow and deliberate. My heart leapt into my throat. The footsteps stopped right above the basement door. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't come any closer. Then the door handle rattled. I jumped up, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. The door creaked open, and I saw a hand reaching inside. I swung the flashlight, and the intruder pulled back with a grunt. I seized the moment and ran past him, bolting up the stairs. I had to get out of the house. I ran to the back door, but the figures were there, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I was trapped. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and faced the figures. "Stay back!" I shouted, but they advanced silently, their movements eerily smooth. Desperation took over. I ran to the living room, thinking I could break a window and escape that way. As I reached for a vase to smash the glass, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, slashing with the knife, but my hand passed through nothing but air. The figure vanished like mist. I stumbled back, realizing with horror that they weren't human. They were something else, something otherworldly. I backed into a corner, clutching the knife, my eyes darting around the room. The figures reappeared, surrounding me. Their eyes were like dark voids, sucking in the light. Just as I thought it was the end, a blinding flash of lightning lit up the room, and the figures recoiled. Taking advantage of their distraction, I ran for the front door, flinging it open and diving into the rain. I sprinted down the street, not daring to look back. I reached a neighbor's house and pounded on the door. They let me in, and I collapsed, drenched and shaking. The police were called, but by the time they arrived, the figures were gone. They found no evidence of anyone in my house, just the broken door and the remnants of my shattered nerves. To this day, I don't know what those figures were or what they wanted. But every stormy night, I can't help but feel their eyes on me, waiting in the mist, ready to return.
Against the windows, and the wind howled like a wild beast. I had always found storms to be comforting, a natural lullaby that helped me sleep. That night, however, the storm felt different, angry, almost malevolent. I was in bed, the dim glow of my bedside lamp casting soft shadows on the walls, when I heard a strange noise downstairs. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again, a distinct, metallic clink, like someone trying to pick the lock. My heart began to race. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed, moving silently towards the staircase. Peering down, I saw the faint outline of a figure at my front door. I dialed 911, whispering to the operator about the intruder. She assured me that police were on their way, but the nearest patrol was at least 15 minutes out. As I hung up, the door creaked open, and the intruder stepped inside. The dim light from the street lamp outside cast a menacing shadow of the figure onto the wall. I retreated into my bedroom, locking the door behind me and grabbing the baseball bat I kept under my bed. The footsteps were getting closer, heavy and deliberate. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the sound of the storm. Suddenly, the doorknob rattled. "I know you're in there," a low, gruff voice called out. "Come out, and I promise I won't hurt you." I didn't believe him for a second. I tightened my grip on the bat, ready to defend myself. The door shook as he tried to force it open. I backed away, my eyes darting around the room for any other means of escape. The window. It was a risky move, but I had no other choice. I threw it open, the wind and rain immediately drenching me. I climbed out onto the ledge, praying that the noise of the storm would cover my escape. I carefully edged along the ledge, trying to reach the tree that grew close to the house. Just as I was about to make my move, the bedroom door burst open. The intruder stormed in, his eyes scanning the room before landing on the open window. "There you are," he growled, rushing towards me. I had no time to think. I leapt towards the tree, barely catching a branch. I scrambled down as fast as I could, the bark scraping my hands. I hit the ground running, not daring to look back. The rain was blinding, but I knew I had to keep moving. I could hear the intruder shouting behind me, but his voice grew fainter as I put distance between us. I reached my neighbor's house, banging on the door frantically. Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who lived alone, opened the door, her eyes wide with shock. "What on earth is going on?" she asked. "Please, let me in." "Someone's in my house," I gasped. She ushered me inside and locked the door. Moments later, we heard the sound of police sirens. The intruder, seeing the flashing lights, fled into the night. The police searched my house but found no trace of him. They assured me they would keep an eye on the neighborhood, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. That night changed everything. The storm that had once brought me comfort now brought only fear. Every time it rained, I was reminded of the intruder, of the night I narrowly escaped with my life. I installed more locks, security cameras, and even moved to a different house, but the fear never truly left me. The memory of that shadowy figure, and the sound of his voice, haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked in the darkness.
Windows, and the thunder roared like a beast in the sky. I had always loved storms, finding comfort in their chaos. That night, I was curled up on my couch with a book when a knock on my door shattered the tranquility. It was the newlywed couple from next door, Jessica and Mark. They had moved in just a few weeks ago and seemed perfectly normal, if a bit reserved. Tonight, they looked different, Jessica's eyes were wide and wild, and Mark's face was set in a grim expression. "Can we come in?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Is everything okay?" "We had a power outage," Mark explained. "It's completely dark in our house. We were hoping to stay here until the storm passes." I nodded, though something about their demeanor made me uneasy. "Sure, make yourselves at home. I'll get some candles." As I lit a few candles and placed them around the living room, Jessica and Mark sat on the couch, whispering to each other. I tried to make small talk, but their responses were curt and distracted. "Do you believe in spirits?" Jessica asked suddenly, her eyes locking onto mine. The question caught me off guard. "Not really," I replied. "Why do you ask?" "We've been experimenting," Mark said, his voice low. "Trying to communicate with the other side." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" "We've been performing rituals," Jessica continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tonight was supposed to be the culmination. We've been preparing for weeks." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "Rituals? What kind of rituals?" Instead of answering, Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a red candle, placing it on the coffee table. "We need to finish what we started," she said, lighting the candle. "We need to complete the circle." Before I could protest, they began chanting in a language I didn't understand. The room seemed to grow colder, and the shadows cast by the candlelight danced menacingly on the walls. My heart pounded as I watched them, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the flame of the red candle flickered and grew, casting an eerie, blood-red glow around the room. Jessica and Mark's chanting grew louder and more frantic. I could feel an oppressive presence closing in, suffocating me. "I think you should leave," I said, my voice shaking. "This isn't right." But they ignored me, lost in their ritual. The air grew thick with tension, and I could see shapes moving in the shadows, circling us. Panic surged through me. I needed to get out of there. Summoning all my courage, I reached out and blew out the red candle. The chanting stopped abruptly, and the room plunged into darkness. Jessica screamed, a sound that chilled me to my core. I stumbled towards the door, my hands shaking. I could hear them scrambling behind me, their movements frantic. Just as I reached the door, a hand grabbed my arm, and I turned to see Mark, his eyes wild with desperation. "You can't leave," he hissed. "We're not finished." I wrenched my arm free and bolted out into the rain, not stopping until I reached my car. I drove to a friend's house, my mind racing. When I returned the next day, Jessica and Mark were gone. Their house was empty, with no sign of their belongings or the strange ritual they had performed. To this day, I don't know what they were trying to summon, or if they succeeded. But I'll never forget the terror I felt that night, or the sight of those red candle flames dancing in the dark.